Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chris McDaniel's America. Of course, I'm Jack Fairchild. We hope to have Chris back with us next week. He's been traveling this week and catching up on work a little bit today and family time. So we knew Chris was not going to be able to be with us today. Unfortunately, my planned guest today was also unable to be here last minute, which caused a little bit of a pivot for me and what we're going to cover and discuss today. But I'm happy to be here with you, and we are still here live on the Midnight Ride Network, your home for the anti-establishment movement. And there's so much going on in the world today. We've got the war with Iran, as of course, and we'll get to this later in the show. Maybe it should be the lead, but we'll get to it later because it predictably, sadly, Iran U.S. negotiations broke down. There's not going to be any further negotiations, it sounds like. And it definitely, predictably, was Iran, I guess, thinking they're in a better position than they are. We'll talk about that later in the show. But I wanted to come to you guys today and kind of talk about these different camps that are out there. Different camps these days when it comes to support of President Donald Trump. These camps can be very, very fervent. They can be very, very passionate. They can be very one side or the other. And I'm sure you know a couple of the camps. There is one camp that basically just runs around and says, we hate everything he does. He is evil. He's the worst person alive. He's the new Hitler. You know who they are. And they're not all liberals. Some of them are your true down-the-wool, never Trump crowd. Some of them are your smug. They want to try to show you that, hey, look how smart I am because you like this guy and I don't, and that makes me somehow superior to you. You know the people I'm talking about. You see them every day. It could be the most minor thing that President Trump does, and just because it's a minor thing that they don't like, they're going to be extremely vocal about it, let alone him do something that they adamantly disagree with. But it's tiring. It's exhausting to watch some of these people, and they're the same people. You see them in your feed every week, and it's, some of them sit there and say that I'm not involved in politics anymore. I'm just not that interested in politics anymore. Yet all they ever do is post about Donald Trump and politics. So you know that crowd, the we hate everything about Trump. But there's another camp that I find equally as annoying. And some of you might not like it when I say it because you may look at this and you may identify with this camp. The other camp is the defend Trump at all cost camp. They're the ones that even when Trump does something questionable or, dare I say, wrong, they're always there to defend it, no matter what. They will fight with every breath to defend him. And again, I get it. He's your guy. You want to support him, but it's okay to support and disagree from time to time. There have been many politicians that I've voted for and still like that I've disagreed with on particular votes or on key issues. It didn't make me regret my vote. It didn't make me dislike them as an individual, but it was something that I was able to do and compartmentalize that it's okay. We're going to disagree from time to time. When you look at this, these people are the ones that are quick to call you a traitor if you disagree with the president. They'll call you a never Trumper, even though you voted for Trump multiple times. They'll accuse you of suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, even though 90% of the time you're on their side. But they're so extreme in their support. Sometimes you almost wonder if they're looking to validate their support of Trump. You don't have to validate your support. Your support's there. Your support's there. But the thing about it, it's okay to admit when they make a mistake, when they're wrong. they're only human. They're only human. They're just a politician. This is not a savior. This is not anyone that should be put high on a pedestal. My favorite is Trump's always playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Is he, though? I mean, sometimes, yeah, it appears that way because he comes up with something good, but sometimes maybe he's just spinning the wheel and seeing if it lands the way that it wants, the way that he wants it to. And that's okay, too, if it works out. Of course, there's the third camp, the one where you support President Trump, but you're willing to say when you disagree. Maybe you disagree in silence nowadays because you fear all of the defend at all cost people. I don't know. Maybe that's what you do. You disagree in silence or only in your own little circle of friends because you're just worried that if you voice your opinion, it's something to where you might question the president, that's a problem. Guys, we didn't elect a dictator in any way, shape, or form. We still have freedom of speech. If you disagree with the president, that is okay. It doesn't instantly make you a Democrat. It doesn't instantly make you a never-Trumper, or it doesn't mean that you have Trump derangement syndrome. Now, the ones in Camp 1, you could make that argument about them because they're doing this about everything. They nitpick every little detail. But when you look at folks who are questioning Trump on the economy, who are questioning Trump on deficit spending, who are questioning Trump even on the war with Iran, those are valid questions. And they could be valid criticisms as well. And that's okay. That doesn't make that person your enemy because you disagree with them. That doesn't make that person and their point less valid. They didn't come to it from a place of hatred of the president. These are people that have gone out and supported Donald Trump with their work, with their money, I'm sure in some cases with donations, with their willingness to go out and defend when Trump deserves to be defended. So shouldn't they be given a little bit of a leeway when they voice an opposition to a position from the president? I think they should. I find myself more in Camp 3 because I'm just not one of those people who's ever going to have a blind allegiance to any politician. Now, some of you in Camp 2 are probably, Trump's not a politician. Yeah, he is. He's run multiple political campaigns. He's now a second-term U.S. president. I hate to break it to you, Donald Trump is a politician. That doesn't mean he's a bad politician, but he is, by the definition of what a politician is, he has fallen into that category. And he definitely plays the game. Just look at his endorsement record. It's a who's who of establishment-linked candidates. It's true. I mean, yeah, every now and then he might go out on a limb and go against one of the establishment folks, but it's never one of the marquee ones. I mean, he endorsed Mitch McConnell. He endorsed John McCain, somebody who he despises. Yes, I know McCain has passed away, but Trump does not have anything but disdain for the late senator. And trust me, I'm not a John McCain fan by any stretch of the imagination. That's not a criticism. That's just pointing out a fact. He has endorsed the swampiest of swamp creatures. So yes, there is a reason to criticize there, especially for somebody who ran a campaign on draining the swamp. You can't drain the swamp if you just keep filling it right back up with the same dirty water. But what good does it do? So, again, that's criticism. In my opinion, a valid criticism that you can have of President Trump. This nation has never been more divided, and we just keep pushing further and further against one another. We even now have camps that have more in agreement than they don't, and they just continue to splinter. And there's a question, What happens when factions within factions start to splinter and fade? Is there hope for a conservative movement? Is there hope even for the Republican Party? Yeah, there probably is. There probably is a hope, but at some point we've got to get away from everything Trump is good. If you go back to the Obama era, and I was doing talk radio while Barack Obama was in the White House, and I was very, very critical of Democrats I know that disagree with certain policies that Barack Obama was putting in place, but they wouldn't say it and they'd defend it, even though I had heard their positions countless times were counter to what Barack Obama was doing. But because he was their guy, because they wanted to validate their support, they turned a blind eye and pretended that we never had those conversations in the past. And they defended the very things that they used to say, no, I don't support. They defended those things. I see a lot of that happening now with a segment within our own base, and I have a problem with that. I'm not your enemy if I say I don't think that we should have attacked Iran while our economy was still struggling. I'm not your enemy if I don't agree with you. You say that Americans should be okay with suffering through high gas prices, because I don't believe that. And I've seen that posted by multiple people online, and I don't agree with that sentiment. I just don't. I'm not going to. Maybe if we hadn't already suffered through 4 years of the Biden administration and voted to get our economy on track, maybe then it might be a different scenario, but we've gone through the suffer. And it's cute that you're financially okay enough that this doesn't really affect you, but it does affect a lot of us. And if we voice our displeasure with it, then that's okay too. That doesn't make me your enemy. But you have to stop viewing everything in that light. What gets behind some of the extreme hero worship that you see, especially in politics? You know, because if you wanted to find hero worship in politics, it is an intense admiration, idolization, and sometimes blind devotion followers display towards a political leader, often elevating them to your near mythical or infallible status. The phenomenon often involves overlooking a leader's flaws, harmful policies, or authoritarian tendencies, leading to dangerous political misjudgments. Again, go back to the Obama era. A lot of that applied because you saw where Obama took steps that you know that people disagreed with. And yet they said nothing because he was their guy. He was the yes, we can. Change. Believe. You remember all the buzzwords Barack Obama, he had a lot of them. He was very, very talented when he got up there in front of that teleprompter. He was a really, really gifted speaker. But again, if we're honest with ourselves, we can see some supporters out there in that second camp I talked about who are doing that very thing with Donald Trump. Look, support President Trump because he needs it. He needs our thoughts. He needs our prayers. He needs us to believe in him. But don't be blind. If you see something he's doing that you disagree with, it's okay to say you disagree with it. If you look at the way that Donald Trump has reacted towards Thomas Massie, who, in my opinion, is one of our better people in Washington, to Rand Paul. And I've seen some of the folks in that second camp refer to them as rhinos. Are you kidding me? Meanwhile, you give Lindsey Graham a pass if you go look at the voting records of Thomas Massie, Rand Paul, and you compare it with a Lindsey Graham, then you know that the rhino is Lindsey Graham. But Lindsey Graham tapped into something where he was always seen kissing up to Trump, and people have given him a pass for a long time. But Lindsey Graham is no conservative. He's not really even a Republican by their own platform standards. Thomas Massie, I think he is. Rand Paul definitely is. So why are we fighting and labeling them the rhinos, yet we give Graham a pass? It's crazy. That's where some of this kind of hero worship gets in. Look, you can disagree with Rand Paul and Thomas Massey. That's fine. I respect that. If you don't agree with their stances, which personally I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you disagree, that's fine. But then to turn around and call them rhinos when their voting records are impeccable with conservative values, come on. That's not being a rhino. That's not a rhino in the slightest. Then also this week, you had President Trump fire out a tweet in which he attacked some of the click hustlers that I talked about on our last show. Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, a handful of others. And while I have no problem with calling them out, because I think they should be called out for, in my opinion, being click hustlers, but you should also include the Ben Shapiro's of the world and the Mark Levins but he didn't. He only focused on the ones who have a negative view of his war on Iran. He ignores the fact that several of them, like Tucker Carlson, one of the things that he pointed out about Tucker Carlson is that Tucker Carlson lost his job at Fox. If you recall, he lost his job at Fox because he was defending Trump after the January 6th event. So he was somebody that was willing to bleed for you. Now, he disagrees with you on this issue, and I don't 100% agree with Tucker Carlson. You know my opinion because you've heard me talk about him. But I think that there was a better way to go about the way that Trump fired that out than just labeling them traitors, because I don't see that. It's one of those things where, again, and the followers, they go right along with it. The key aspects of political hero worship, you have an idolization of leaders. This is defined by following perceived leaders as uniquely capable or morally superior, often ignoring evidence of misconduct or failure. We see that all the time. We've seen people defend different aspects of politicians that they like. Even when they get caught in a scandal, they get caught doing something wrong, they find a way to defend it. An intellectual misjudgment. Historically, educated individuals and intellectuals have fallen into this trap, admiring demagogues and dictators like Mussolini, Chavez, and leaders of totalitarian regimes. So we've seen this, and again, not saying Trump is a tolerant, because I don't believe that. So I want to be 100% clear before somebody misconstrues and says that's what I'm saying. I'm just pointing out an example here of where some of this, the intellectual masses can fall in. And I think a lot of that intellectual masses that I'm talking about fall more in line with the Democrats, and they're going to be the ones that are going to make the next Democrat savior infallible. We also know that the cult of personality is an issue here. Such admiration is central to the creation of a cult of personality, where the leader's image is carefully correlated to foster adoration, frequently seen in certain authoritarian contexts. They also talk about an emotional connection where the bond is often emotional rather than rational, driven by a desire for a strong leader who promises to solve complex societal issues. This is one that I'm accustomed to seeing Democrats fall into, mainly because, as we've talked about when we talk about liberalism is it is a policy of emotion. It is. We can't stand the fact that there are poor people in need and hungry, so we just will feed and pay them willy-nilly out of the government coffers, never stopping to ask, where does that money come from? Who's actually funneling that money? it sounds good, as most liberal policies do. They sound good in their practice. They sound good in the theory, but they don't work good when you actually put them in practice. Once they actually start to implement these policies, that's when folks start to realize, wait, that's my money going to this? That's my dollars? And we can't really control whether or not there's fraud in it or not, because there's going to be. It's human nature, as you know. So that's one of the major issues that we face when it comes to the emotional connection. But again, I think some of those in Camp 2 that I talked about, they have that emotional connection to the president, and they're not willing to concede that there might be some things that it's okay to question, some things that it's okay to disagree with. They don't want to see that for whatever reason. Again, we can have, and here's the thing too, how are we going to have honest debates about topics if we are so far in this political spectrum that if I question a leader that you like, whether it's Donald Trump or the next guy down the road, and you aren't willing to even have the discussion, we're just going to blindly fight because I question a particular policy issue. That's a problem. How do we survive as a party? How do we survive as a nation if that's where we're at? Again, I'm accustomed to seeing that from the Democrats. This is a relatively new phenomenon within conservative circles. It's okay to say that somebody has flaws because we're not perfect. The president's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. It's okay to admit that. It's okay to not always defend. And it's also okay, and this is something I also want to be clear for some of you smug folks in Camp 1. It's also okay to admit when you're wrong. Because if you thought a policy was bad, and then the president's policy pans out, it's okay for you to say, well, I didn't see that going that direction. I was wrong. You rarely see that side do that either. That adds to the friction here. The fiercely defenders view them as hypocrites for not admitting that they were wrong. The anti-group, they view the fierce defenders as hypocrites for not criticizing when there is a policy that is proven to be wrong. And those in the third camp are just sitting here as like, when are the grown-ups going to enter the room? When are we going to have an honest conversation about things? Like you can be critical and still think the president is doing a good job too. You can be critical and still think that he's the right guy for the job. I have no regrets about voting for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. None whatsoever. I can say that with a straight face because I mean it. I guarantee you several of those folks in the whole camp here are just not ever going to be willing to do that. And it's frustrating for sure because you're constantly watching this back and forth bickering. I have told this story time and time again, and I will continue to tell the story that I was for a long time an active participant in Republican politics. I was a member of my county Republican Executive Committee. I'm I think a 3-time, I may have been a 4-time delegate at the Republican State Convention. Again, I'm not telling you that to brag because it's really nothing. I mean, it really is just showing up at a convention and winning a popularity vote. I mean, that's all it is. So I'm not bragging. I'm not boasting myself as a head. I'm just giving credentials to somebody who was a longtime Republican. I left the party. I don't vote strictly down party lines. Now, am I willing to show up and vote for a Democrat? Probably not. But am I always going to show up and vote for the Republican when I know that the Republican is going to go up there and vote for things that I disagree with and going to continue to grow the size and scope of government? No, I won't. If my options are the lesser of two evils, there's a little write-in tab. I'll write that in. If there's a third-party candidate on there and I've done my homework and I don't think he's a disgrace or a lunatic, I don't have a necessary problem voting for that. Do I think they're going to win? No, I don't. But I do believe a protest vote matters. I do believe that protest votes are a real thing here because that's one of the things that should happen. It's crazy when you sit back and look at some of the things that just trigger folks. And it's an irrational thought process because, again, I'm never going to be a single issue voter. I'm one of these people that recoils from people that become single issue voters. If you only vote for candidates because they're with you on one particular issue, you're part of the problem. And I'll be one of the first ones to say that. Because that's what I believe. I believe you have to look at the scope of things. And yeah, sometimes that means this guy agrees with me on 98% of the issues, but there's a 10% area that we don't agree on. If you're okay voting for a guy that gives you 90%, that seems rational to me. But if you're okay voting for a guy that gives you 50 to 40%, that doesn't really seem to make rational sense to me, because are you really winning at that point? I mean, what's really the difference there from voting for that guy and voting for the Democrat? Because what if you look at the Democrat and he's willing to give you 50% as well? Where's the difference? There just really isn't one. There really is little to no difference whatsoever. And that's where we come into this whole idea. Now we're coming up on a hard break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the consequences that I see listed through some of this hero worship. And we've talked about hero worship before, but maybe not to the breakdown, maybe not to the extent that I'm doing today, because I just see this complete divide, this complete division. And we have to be willing to talk about it, because if we're not willing to talk about it, we're not willing to come up with ways to work with people that have question marks about the president and the people that have this blind devotion, then I don't see much of a future, because at some point we're going to have to come together. Now, that first camp, again, I understand why you want to exclude them, because, yeah, they frustrate me too. Guys, I'm Jack Fairchilds. This is Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home for the anti-establishment movement. We're going to take a quick break right here and let our sponsors pay a few bills for us.
To Pearl River Resort.
I got to talk to our producer about longer breaks than that. That seemed very, very quick. So we need to. Can we add a couple? Can you sell us a couple of more sponsorships? Whatever it takes. We need like a minute break there, maximum. Minimum, maximum. We can go 2. So yeah, work on that for us. Get us a few more ads. Our producer does not sell ads, by the way, just so you know. I'm joking with our producer there, but we've been talking about this hero worship in politics, which is a common theme because we're seeing it, we're living through some of it. We've been living through it because, again, as I accurately pointed out, if you go back to the Obama era, the Democrats loved them some Obama. Now there were some who were critical, rightfully so, of some of Obama's policies that pushed further to the left because that's not what they believe. But the majority of them just changed their philosophy right along with Barack Obama. And I have a fear when I broke down these different camps that there's a camp that's willing to move their ideology to fit in with President Trump. And I don't like that. I recoil from that because I want it to be okay to be critical. I want it to be okay to call out things that I disagree with. You can be an adamant supporter of the war with Iran. You can. But if I say that I have questions about our timing of it, or if another person says that they don't like it, or another person says that, hey, I'm not a fan of it because I think Israel should fight her own wars, that doesn't mean they're instantly on an opposite side of you. They just don't agree with you on this particular issue. That should be okay. But we're getting to the point where we're not. And if you're just tuning in, let me remind you of the camps. The first camp is the absurd, we hate everything that Trump does. He's evil. He's the worst person alive. He's the new Hitler. They are the ones that you could accurately describe as having Trump derangement syndrome. They've never voted for the president. They have been critical of anything that the president does. Even if it's been a positive, they are going to find something to be critical about. The second camp that I talked about was the defend Trump at all costs camp, and they're the ones that are willing to attack any disagreement that I was just talking about and, call you a traitor, a never Trumper, claim that you suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, even though you voted for him multiple times. There is also the third camp. This is the camp I probably mostly align with. And it's the one where you support the president. You don't regret voting for President Trump. But you're willing to point out when you disagree. You're willing to say the president is wrong on certain policy issues like the deficit. There are certain issues that you're willing to stand up and say. And you need to be that way because, again, we didn't elect a king. I know those Democrats think we did. That's why they like to have their little no kings protest, but we didn't elect a king. So it's okay to disagree. Matter of fact, let's not forget, Trump, like all politicians, is a public servant. He's there for us. So we disagree, we have to be willing to go on record and say it. That's okay. Be scary, I know, especially when you got these two camps that are just polar opposites of one another, and they're both trying to fight for your soul, I guess, and you really don't want to give it to either of them. We were talking about hero worship, and we went through a couple of key aspects, which, were idolization of leaders, intellectual misjudgment, the cult of personality, and the emotional connections. What are some of the consequences of falling into a trap where you just make your elected official infallible and immune to any criticism? You can undermine your government. Intense, uncritical support can weaken democratic institutions and accountability. We've seen it. History tells us that happens. Doesn't matter if it's a Republican, doesn't matter if it's a Democrat. We have to be able to be critical. Period. It also can lead to an acceptance of harmful actions, as followers may justify or ignore significant harm caused by leaders to their own nation or others. And then one of the last ones it has is political polarization. It deepens divisions as opposing sides often hold completely different idealized views of their respective leaders. That last one, I kind of feel like that's where we're at. Now, this didn't start with Donald Trump. For those of you who are mad, who fall in camp two, who think that this is an attack. No. As I've said multiple times, we really saw the origins of this begin under the presidency of Barack Hussein Obama. Because that's when we started to see these camps. That's when you started to see, and again, this is what I'm trying to get you to understand, because There was a time all of you were critical of the blind support that several Democrats just threw out to Obama. You were willing to say that's a little crazy, because I remember what they used to say, and they didn't always agree with that. Yet now you just turn a blind eye to it. You have started to maybe project some of the very things that you used to be critical of. Now, not in terms of, but in terms of ignoring flaws. As I said, we're all humans. We're all deeply flawed. Not a shot at the president. I know some of you are going to be, how dare you say that about Trump? Well, you're one of the ones that needs to be hearing this more than anyone, because I can assure you, he's extremely flawed. As am I, as am you. This, again, is just a reality. This is facts. These are the things that you need to understand and accept. And you used to. It's one of those things that we really and truly need to be having this conversation. We got midterms coming up in November. Smart money's on the Democrats are going to make gains. They're probably going to take the Senate or the House, maybe even both. At that point, it becomes just a war of attrition against the president's agenda, because they're going to tie him up in impeachment hearings and different things, and you're not going to see much move. Republicans have had an opportunity to move the needle, and they haven't. They've allowed Democrats to be obstructionists without even holding the power, because they refuse to do what needs to be done in order to push through the agenda. All of Trump's executive orders that you are happy with, you get giddy about, if they're not codified by Congress, when he leaves office and the next Democrat comes in, they're going away. They're going away. That's a reality. It's not me just speaking of fear. That's me telling you how this works. I mean, how many of Biden's executive orders did Trump do away with? Because they weren't codified by Congress. So again, if it's not codified by Congress, the next time a Democrat's in, that's going away. It's not legally binding. It is no guarantee that it's going to continue to exist. So yeah, we need to be critical of Republicans, because they haven't done their job. We need to be critical of anything we disagree with. Whether it's President Trump, whether it's someone that you admire and agree with 90% of the time, if you think they're on the wrong, it doesn't mean you don't support them because you throw out a criticism of it. It does not mean that. I can assure you. It's insane that we've reached this point. But that last point, the political polarization, as I said, the definition, it deepens divisions as opposing sides often hold completely different idealized views of their respective leaders. We're there. And again, we didn't get there because of Donald Trump, but now we're starting to see that splinter within conservative factions, because again, you've got groups that want responsible government being told that they have Trump derangement syndrome because they're asking for us to control the budget. Something that we were promised, was something that we voted for. It's one of the reasons Trump was elected. Biden's economy was terrible, people. We lived through it. We know it. We felt the sting of it. And Trump came in, and initially it looked like we were going to get the economy back on track. Then the engagement, war, whatever you want to call it, with Iran, I call it a war because that's what it is, starts, and gas prices shoot up, which means grocery prices, which were still too high to begin with, they start shooting up because, again, if it costs more to transport it from point A to point B, grocery store is not going to eat that cost. They're going to pass it right along to you. I can assure you. Supply and demand. It happens, people. Again, it's okay. It's okay to have these conversations. It's not just okay, it's necessary. We need to be willing to have thought. We need to be willing to sit down and say, okay, here's everything I like about President Trump. Here's everything I don't like about President Trump. And those of you in Camp 2 need to be willing to listen to that. Because again, the people that are coming to you are not people that didn't vote for the president. They're not people that have actively fought against the president. They're people that voted for him. They're people that believed him. They're people that thanked God when he beat Kamala Harris. There are people that cried when Joe Biden stole, whatever you want to say about the election in 2020. So maybe you should listen to them because they're not your enemy. Camp 1, yeah. Maybe until they start acting more rational, maybe you shouldn't listen to them because they're pretty insane with their constant everything Trump does is bad. Where's the middle ground there? You have a middle ground with people who agree with Trump more than they disagree with him. But this willingness to just attack, and it's so much easier on social media. Again, social media has brought out the worst in our society, without a doubt. We've got people that are willing to go on there and type out things that they would never say to somebody's face. Because they know if they said it to my face, I'd probably punch them in the mouth. But sitting there on that keyboard, you can type whatever you want. There's no fear anybody's going to punch you in the mouth. There's no fear. Because, yeah, I may see your name, but I don't know where you are. I don't know where you live. I can't just show up there. You're not right in front of me. Odds are you're further away, so I'm not going to drive there to physically assault you. So you're safe in your little bubble. So you'll say whatever you want. And some of it's absolutely absurd. Some of it's just flat out rude. And some of it's just vile. And we're witnessing that more and more. And we're seeing it. Used to, it was 100% the liberals. 100% was the liberals. But now we're seeing others do it. And in part because when you see the president put out tweets like he has, or Truth Social posts, whatever you call them, some people feel like, okay, that's how he conducts himself, so I'm going to do that too. But if that's not who you've always been, then maybe you shouldn't. It's not the best example, in my personal opinion, and maybe you should stay out of that realm. Is there some way that we can come together? I hope. Because if there's not, you're gonna see issues. You're gonna see issues in November. Of course, if Republicans keep running neocon, weak-kneed, moderate rhinos, then they deserve the issues they get. When we defend Lindsey Graham, and yet we attack Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, that's a problem. It's a problem. Again, can we come together? I hope. Will we come together? I'm not so sure. Because camps 1 and 2, they're not going to come together. Because camp 1's never going to give Trump any credit where it is due. And camp 2 knows that, so there's no, and since they're already adamantly, blindly supporting him, they're not gonna They're not going to push too much. They know they can't find a common ground with them. But Camp 2 and 3 have a common ground. They have an area where they can because they both voted for and support President Trump. It's just going to take Camp 2 understanding that there are some who have reasonable objections to some of Trump's policies. And you should be willing to listen to that. Even if at the end of the day, you ultimately disagree. Even if at the end of the day, you ultimately say, you know what, you had some valid points, but I'm on the other side of that. That's something we got to get back to. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I got into an online exchange with somebody on social media. It was over when Ted Cruz said that Christ is King equals I hate the Jews comment. He accused me of being anti-Semitic just because I believed Christ is King is accurate and a fine statement, was critical of Senator Cruz. Two of us went back and forth, but at the end of it, once I pointed out, because he was mad at me for going on the attack of him. Look, I'm a talk radio host. You come at me, I'm going to come back at you with venom. That's just part of the trade. After I pointed out that he kind of set the entire stage for everything that followed afterwards when he accused me of being anti-Semitic, he conceded and apologized. And you know what happened after that? We found common ground. And we were able to talk. We didn't agree on everything, but he was able to listen to my point of view. And even if at the end of it he didn't agree, he understood where I was coming from, and I understood where he was coming from. And we were fine. It went from a very hostile and contentious conversation to two people who could be friends now. And it's just because we took a step back from this tribal nonsense and understood that, you know what, this guy might be smart, even though he disagrees with me on something. That's what it takes. You got to be willing to take that step backwards. Now, we've got about 11 minutes left in the show, so I do need to switch gears because I did tease at the top of the show that I was going to talk about this offer, the peace treaty negotiations. As you know, President J.D. Vance, or Vice President J.D. Vance, sorry. I'm not trying to elevate him. I'm sorry to Camp 2. I'm not trying to push President Trump out. That was just a Freudian slip there of some kind, or no Freudian slip, actually. It was just just me saying the wrong thing. But Vice President J.D. Vance, he went and had negotiations in Islamabad Saturday. And apparently that's where he presented a final offer to Iran during these negotiations. The demands of the United States asked for are all the ones that you'd expect us to ask for. They included end of all uranium enrichment, dismantling all major nuclear facilities, and retrieving highly enriched uranium. The fourth was to accept a broader regional peace and de-escalation framework that included regional allies. This was followed by stopping funding proxy groups, including Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. The sixth demand was to fully open the Strait of Hormuz and not charging any tolls for passage. The talks between the United States and Iran lasted 21 hours, but ended without an agreement. Vance confirmed that the impasse late Saturday, while President Trump said Sunday that Iran remains unwilling to abandon its nuclear ambitions, leaving the tensions unresolved. Look, I'm one of those who does agree that Iran can't really have nuclear capabilities. But I do think that we need to. The path to peace was laid out, and I do think that Iran is kind of in this delusional state that they think that they have stronger negotiation. I think part of it is they know that the American resolve might not be as strong for this conflict as it has been in other conflicts in the past. They probably see some of the things I talked about when it comes to the economy, and they feel like, okay, we can just wait this one out. I think that they're playing a game, and we'll see what happens next. Because again, it's frustrating because when the ceasefire was reached, we all had a sense of relief. We all had this sense of, okay, maybe this conflict's coming to an end. But it doesn't sound like Iran, and I had a feeling it was going to come to this, especially when Iran put out that ridiculous 10-point plan for them to accept the peace agreement. You knew that that was never going to be accepted upon, and it was delusional that they thought it was. You were hoping that maybe cooler heads would prevail, but it does not seem that that's going to happen. It's saying that Vance held a bilateral meeting Saturday with Pakistani Prime Minister ahead of the negotiations with Iran. The Prime Minister there, of course, he played a key role in brokering the ceasefire. But Iran's lead negotiator on Friday warned that talks in Pakistan would not begin unless Lebanon also sees a ceasefire. And again, that might be, I don't necessarily have a problem with a ceasefire with Lebanon and Israel, and Israel should be willing to do that for the United States, especially considering the fact we've jumped into this battle with them much to our own peril. We'll see what happens, because Iran's going to have to accept a lot of the stuff because they're not in the position that they want to believe that they are. The U.S. is deploying a carrier strike group to the Middle East after the peace talks with Iran collapsed over this past weekend. President Trump ordered a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz after Iran backed out of the negotiations in Pakistan, vowing not to allow the Tehran to profit off of sending oil to favored countries. So again, we're about back to square one, which, yeah, there was a lot of hope after the ceasefire began, but I think most people who have studied that region and studied that regime knew that ultimately they were going to try to overplay their hand. And that's exactly what Iran did. It's what they've always done. It's part of the reason why there's so many people that view them as dangerous, because you see that they are irrational and delusional in many aspects. So what's next? Where do we go from here? Are we going to end up with the apocalyptic strikes that President Trump threatened last weekend? It's possible. Is there going to be a cooler head that will prevail at some point? I hope so. I don't know. I know that regime, only thing they've ever respected is violence, because that's what they promote. That's what they push. I am 100% against boots on the ground in Iran. I've said that from day one. I do not want to see the loss of American life for another foreign war. My resolve for that's just not there. I know some of you might be okay with it because maybe your kids are old enough to where you don't have to worry about them laying down their lives, but maybe put yourself in the shoes of somebody with a young child of age that they could be wrapped up in this conflict. someone with a child that's currently an active military soldier. Maybe put yourself in their shoes, and maybe you're not as quick to just say, hey, let's push war. If there is a resolution that does not involve boots on the ground, then I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Because I just don't think that the American people have the stomach for it. I know this, to the crowd that's screaming, just be willing to sacrifice, pay the higher gas prices, that's cute. It's cute, but you can post that all you want on social media. It's not going to change the way that people view it. It's not going to change. It's not going to make their sacrifice any less than it already is. It's not going to change the fact that we were promised cheaper gas prices and a better economy. Those were the things that were voted for. Those are the things that it's okay to expect. If you fall in camp 2 and that offends you when I say that, then I'm sorry. It's not me, it's you at that point. Hate to break it to you, but I'm not saying anything different than I've said my entire life. And there was a time you would have agreed with me, but then you got wrapped up. Whether it's a cult of personality or whatever it is, you got wrapped up and you're not willing to listen. That's a problem. But again, it's not me, it's you. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I willing to actually have the substantive conversation with somebody that has a different point of view or a different opinion when it comes to the war in Iran? If you're not willing to have that, if you're not willing to have that conversation and sit down and have that discussion, again, it's not me, it's you. We've got to figure it out, people. Because again, we're more on the same side than we're not. We all voted for President Trump. Just one group of us knows it's okay to say when we disagree, and the other views that as a slap in the face. And if you view that as a slap in the face, it's not me. It's you. You're the problem. And that's what we have to try to figure out how to solve. Guys, I'm Jack Fairchilds. I've been filling in this week for Chris McDaniel. Hope to have him back next week. Would love to. I'm sure when we have him back, it'll be another one of those where I'm going to ask him a lot of stuff about this stuff. Probably going to ask him about some of the stuff I talked about this particular episode, because I would love to pick his brain here and get his opinion on these things. I think he would agree with me. I don't think I said anything that he would disagree with today. So we'll see. But this has been Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home for the anti-establishment movement. We'll see you again next week.
Looks like you've been sleeping well,
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
and you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit MyPillow.com.